Thank you, Becky, and good afternoon. It's wonderful so many of you chose to give of your time to attend the second part of this groundbreaking program. Volunteers First took a village of longtime AAUW California and Oregon leaders and a few non-members. Today's program would not have been possible without Cheryl Blakely, former president of AAUW Palm Springs branch, author and consultant with AAUW of California, Barry Altland, who enlightened our understanding of why and how engaging the head, heart, and hands of volunteers increases member engagement, retention, and leadership, and consented to our using his book for this program. Sigmund Marantz, AAUW California Branch Leadership Development Chair, and Gloria Holland, Salem, Oregon Branch member. I thank them all. This session is session 2 of Volunteers First. If you attended the first session, you'll be hearing the background information repeated for several slides. A brief review of session 1 will catch everyone up on the basics. Volunteers First is an awareness program designed specifically for leaders of volunteers. Volunteers First seeks serious consideration for a voluntary pivot from a transactional approach where leaders primarily assign tasks to a transformative approach where leaders primarily build and facilitate relationships. Volunteers First provides AAUW leaders and members with research-based information on how to discover, connect, support, and recognize volunteer members in ways that bring each joy as individuals. To wrap our heads around the importance of this pivot requires your knowing a bit of background on why and how we arrived at Volunteers First. Since 1881, AAUW has prided itself in being unique by conducting research, giving us guidance for legislative advocacy, and developing programs that empower women and girls externally. AAUW's continuing decline in membership begged to be researched internally. Sandy Gabe, former AAUW of California president, made a bold decision to do just that. In 2022, former AAUW California members were surveyed and asked why they dropped their branch membership. Particular attention was given to answers of those who had been leaders and/or actively engaged. Other than moving or illness, a significant number said they left AAUW because they felt unwelcome, disconnected, and/or just became disinterested in participating, even for the cause. Sandy challenged the AAUW Leadership Development Committee to find a new and different, but credible and effective volunteer leadership program. Our educational journey took months of research. After reading Barry Altland's book, Engaging the Head, Heart, and Hands of Volunteers, and meeting with him in person, we started to understand why we're losing members and how to make an effective leadership correction. Barry had us look inward for our volunteer motivators. Once done, Barry suggested our collective intrinsic motivators are likely the same motivators as those of most of our members. Interestingly, they are similar to the ones on Maslow's hierarchy of needs on this slide. Barry suggested all AAUW leaders have to do is learn and focus on satisfying the intrinsic needs of volunteer motivators of our members and modify our volunteer leadership best practices accordingly. We looked for and found credible research that supports Barry's theory. Volunteers leaders around the world were also seriously concerned about the drastic decline in volunteer membership. South American volunteers decided to conduct a study interviewing volunteers worldwide. The results were conclusive. Universally, people volunteer to satisfy one or more of their intrinsic needs. And those intrinsic needs are to altruize, socialize, learn, and self-actualize. These intrinsic needs of volunteers look much like the higher needs on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, confirming Berry's theory. Credible research indicates most AAUW members will choose to give of their time, talent, and skills when at least some of their intrinsic needs are met. Managing volunteers so they'll renew and lead is not a matter of how we run our business. Volunteerism is an affair of the heart. If you take home nothing else from this conference, remember this: fulfilling the members' intrinsic motivators for volunteering is what touches their heart. Fulfillment drives their choices for volunteering, and that joy is what sustains their passion for serving. The heart you see here represents this newfound awareness. If AAUW's leaders want to increase and retain membership and develop leaders, they must pivot from focusing primarily on the task, the policy, the procedure, the process, and business practices, to focusing on people, our members. To sustain our organization, AAUW leaders must focus on volunteers first. Australians also studied volunteerism. They compiled many studies of volunteer leadership from around the world and came up with a list of specific leadership best practices to improve member volunteer retention, engagement, and leadership development. The results of the Australian study were universal. Successful leaders of volunteers build and facilitate relationships. They make it their number one priority. We simplified the recommended best practices for how to build and facilitate relationships into 4 interchangeable leadership abilities: care, connect, support, and recognize. In this session, we will cover how to support and recognize. Care and connect are covered in the first session. To build and facilitate relationships with and among members, AAUW leaders must first and always show they genuinely care about each and every member. Care means discovering what moves each member to volunteer, what interests and activities bring each member satisfaction and joy, what each member hopes to gain by being an AAUW member and working for the cause. Is it to altruize, socialize, learn, or self-actualize? After getting to know new and unengaged members, AAUW leaders are then able to connect them to other members who are involved in branch activities of similar interest. Connecting builds and facilitates relationships with and among members. The need for connection is powerful, especially now. Research shows a key difference between very happy people and less happy people is good relationships. Remember, AAUW's number one priority is not to assign tasks, even when leaders are connecting members to each other. Assigning tasks does not build relationships, nor does it serve the purpose of putting the wants and needs of our member volunteers first. And at this stage, it certainly might not even bring them joy. After connecting members to others who are involved in branch activities of similar interest, effective leaders focus on supporting them. Effective leaders of volunteers support members in ways that are personal to them, the members. The first way to personalize support is to show the engaged member you care about her as a person. If you haven't already done so, now is the time to discover, rediscover, ask, or refresh your memory about that person's intrinsic motivators for volunteering, the ones we discussed previously. Remember what research tells us. A member's engagement depends on fulfilling the member's volunteer intrinsic motivators while they're engaging in an AAUW activity. Their needs to altruize, socialize, learn, or self-actualize. Pivoting from hostile to flow couldn't be more challenged than when it comes to supporting each member to sustain interest, engagement, and renewal in the short term, not to mention the long term. AAUW leaders and members want a magic formula we can apply now, so younger members will quickly grow into a beautiful branch of engaged, energetic, and long-term committed members who make sustaining AAUW a priority and become leaders. I wish I could provide you with that magic formula. But like Jerry Scott and Jim Borgman illustrated in this Zits cartoon, there are many distractions that are barriers to a quick fix. The reality is women, young and old alike, are developing short-term attention spans and find it difficult to relax. Volunteer organizations want instant results, but we're competing with iPhones and social media for women we believe who could find so much more satisfaction and joy in being an AAUW member. So anytime an engaged member does choose to show up, it's really important to give personalized support for attending and engaging in ways that touch their heart. Support begins by creating a welcoming branch environment that will eventually be more appealing than sitting alone on the couch with their iPhone or taking a warm bath. The second way to personalize support is to confirm for yourself that each member is actually connected to or matched with activities that align with their interests. Volunteers First leaders take time while they themselves are engaging as a speaker or mingling with a group to observe each engaged member. How much are they engaging? Are others encouraging her? Are they smiling or frowning? Do they stay till the end or leave early? These observations can be touched upon in personalized conversations by touching bases with members. Touching base is the single most critical, proactive, and effective support measure a leader can take to sustain a member's passion for volunteering. Touching base with each member is best when done, ideally, in person, in a cafe, on a phone, and if not, on a short Zoom. Schedule one-on-one chats when there's plenty of time to talk. Express your sincere, positive appreciation for the members' participation and any recent special contributions. Let the member know it's the serving that matters, not how much time served. Ask about satisfaction and fulfillment. Discuss dissatisfaction and any fulfillment barriers. Ask for feedback and suggestions. Offer alternative ways to serve. Better yet, encourage creative thinking for new ideas, programs, planning, and implementation. Slow down and take time to ask engaged members, how's it going? With this slide, I would like to introduce you to Toby Johnson, who's the president of Toby Johnson and Associates, a consulting firm whose mission is to help nonprofit organizations make connections with remarkable volunteers. Toby has an MA in Modern Art History and is a certified volunteer administrator. Toby's training is research-based, and I encourage you to Google it for enlightening educational insights. Toby gave me permission to share her summation of new research she found debunking myths about volunteers of all ages. She found what matters to volunteers, no matter what their age is, a well-run organization, mutual respect, challenging work that's meaningful and makes a difference, short-term micro-volunteering opportunities, choices and autonomy, control, support and training, knowing where they stand, when they're doing well, and how to do better. A thank you now and then. When offering support, don't hesitate to be assertive. Ask an engaged member about her comfort level with these most important personal needs. Are they being satisfied? And what seems to be missing? Listen, then act quickly to make member-specific need satisfaction changes. Before we move on to recognition, there are some very important and effective ways to grow leaders. Prioritize your leadership development energy. Along the way, assess which engaged members appear to enjoy leadership. Assess whether or not an interested potential leader has the heart for caring, connecting, and supporting others. Spend your time and energy developing and elevating those engaged members who have the interest and ability, time, and care for others to become leaders. Excuse me just a minute. I've lost my way. Empower newly engaged members to be AAUW leaders. Start by creating many small, doable lead roles with small teams for leading or co-leading activities of their interest. Create many opportunities for member volunteers to share in branch roles, program, and active decision-making. Effective leaders create opportunities for members to take a small lead. Sometimes it's good to bow out of a long-held position, create a vacancy, and give others a true opportunity to step up. Effective leaders allow members to own implementation of their mission-related suggestions. Empower and challenge all AAUW members to be AAUW sustainers with branch participation, leadership, advocacy, or philanthropy. The fourth leadership ability is recognition. We wanted everyone who attended Volunteers First to meet and hear from Barry Altland, author of the engaging Head, Heart, and Hands of Volunteers. Barry is here this afternoon to share one of his favorite topics, rethinking volunteer recognition. Welcome, Barry.
Well, Peggy, thank you so much. And what an honor it is to be here with all of our leaders to talk about this very important topic of recognition. And I love some of the messages that we just heard, that we just learned from you, Peggy, because even that comic strip, it would lead us to believe that maybe the rising generation of teens and 20s and 30s, our future leaders, our rising leaders, are somehow reinventing humanity when they're really not. I believe the things that we've been talking about up to this point, and even what we're going to dig into regarding recognition, are they're just universal, and they span the generations. So I don't want us to think about this as something that only younger leaders or younger volunteers might value, but yet I believe that these principles touch all generations. And certainly Toby Johnson's work reinforces that as well, because what we heard is that her research indicates that these are truths that span across generations. And no dig into recognition would be of great value unless we first do a touch on motivation. So let's just talk about motivation for a bit and revisit this simple truth that there are only two types of motivation. We have intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic is all about what is happening in our hearts. It's the stuff that matters to us. It's the things that are our lives that compel us to make the choices and the actions that we take every single day of our lives. And then in contrast, the extrinsic motivating factors, that's typically an effort that's made by somebody else to try to get us to do what they would like us to do. And of course, we recognize that if we look at these two and think about which one is more powerful, we recognize that intrinsic motivation is by far more powerful and infinitely more powerful when it comes to the way that we guide and lead volunteers to serve in organizations. And after we understand this essential truth about motivation, only then can we really begin to comprehend what recognition looks like in an organizational context. Because here's a simple truth. Just like our intrinsic motivators are unique to us, we all have this unique cocktail of intrinsic drivers that stirs in our hearts. And yours is, it could be similar to others, but it's never exactly the same as somebody else's. So it is true with recognition. This is often in organizations where we've gone awry traditionally, is that we don't recognize that when it comes to recognition, one size does not fit all. And that's a really important thing for us to keep in mind, is that every one of us wants to be recognized in ways that are unique to us. So I recognize that I'm poking at many of the traditional programs that many organizations, possibly even yours, have created to be able to recognize others. Whether it's events, whether it's tangible items or awards, those kind of things. I know that those are longstanding practices in many, many organizations. But if we understand how intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation can work, it can certainly help us to embrace this simple truth. And it will answer why some of us love awards and some of us love events and some of us really don't care that much about awards or events. And the truth is that extrinsic motivation, and those are extrinsic motivation factors, that it's only effective when those factors are in some way connected to our intrinsic motivation. And let me just lay that out there again. Extrinsic factors are only effective, they only work when they're in some way connected to our intrinsic motivation factors. And the most simple truth, and I love to ask this, is especially in a group of learners when I'm facilitating, I will ask them, so how many of you have ever received a certificate or award or plaque or something like that? Of course, in the room, in the volunteers, almost every hand goes up because we've all received those at somewhere along the way to recognize our efforts. And then I love to ask as a follow-up question, okay, so where is that item right now? And you get this broad array of responses, anywhere from I threw it away in the trash to it's tucked away in a box in my garage to it's prominently mounted on the wall in my home office for everybody to see. So you hear these wide responses, and that indicates to us that one size does not fit all, and that extrinsic motivation factors will impact us differently because our intrinsic motivation factors are also different. So yes, I know that I'm busting some myths right there, and I'm going to continue to step on those toes because I believe it's an essential learning for all of us. I talk about cow tipping and sacred cows, and maybe we need to tip a few sacred cows. We need to acknowledge that, hey, what has gotten us here might not keep us moving forward into our future when we really need to fully engage our volunteers into our future. So we have to embrace that recognition. It's not an event. And recognition, it's also not a tangible item. Instead, what recognition is it's a leadership practice. It's a cultural tenet. It is something that we build into the culture of our organization to let people know that they are valued. And I believe that despite all of our unique intrinsic motivators, all the things that make us tick and drive us to do what we do, there is one intrinsic motivation that we all share, and that is that we all want to matter. We all want to make a difference. We all want to know that, hey, we actually helped somebody or moved something along or in some way had a positive impact. And this touches on some ways, these things that I've been talking about. If you're familiar at all with the 5 love languages, the work by Gary Chapman, it really speaks to that because what we're talking about here is not speaking in the love language or not speaking in the recognition language that we prefer, but speaking in the love language or the recognition language of the recipient of the recognition. And recognizing that lots of different ways can work for lots of different people, but if we really want to land with most everybody, this is how we do it. How we do it is by helping people to understand that what they're doing is actually making a difference. And leaders use their words. Leaders use their words. They provide that meaningful feedback. They help the person to tangibly feel by descriptive words that what they're doing is actually helping to drive the mission of your organization forward. And I believe in this so deeply, and I have been able to witness it, a simple truth. When we talk about leadership practices, when we talk about the choices that you make as leaders and how you compel continued performance through your volunteers, is just embrace whatever gets recognized is what is going to get repeated. So the more that you use your words, and maybe even set aside or de-emphasize the big events and the awards and plaques and those kind of things, and instead build in more of your intentional leadership practices of just touching base. I heard that reference a few minutes ago, touching base, and telling our volunteers specifically what they did to make a difference in their volunteer work today. And I can guarantee you that will drive, that will compel the behavior, and it's going to help your recognition practices become so much stronger in your organization. Do I recognize that? Yes, that's a hard thing to do. It is really difficult to be able to customize your recognition to every single unique human being who serves in your organization. I get it. That's tough. But that is the call. That's the call of leaders. And nobody ever promised you that leadership was going to be a simple task. In fact, that is the very challenge, is how do I get to know the uniqueness of that individual so that I can reach in and I can touch their heart in really important and critical ways. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to our partners. And I just appreciate this time to be able to share this simple message of recognition and its connection to intrinsic motivation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barry, for engaging your head, heart, and hand with AAUW. We so appreciate all you have done for us, and we hope that our relationship will continue. It's just been wonderful to work with you. Thank you very much. In summary, AAUW member engagement depends on AAUW leaders creating a volunteer environment of engagement activities that touch each member's heart, fulfills their need to altruize, socialize, learn, or self-actualize while benefiting women and girls. AAUW member engagement depends on leaders building and facilitating member relationships. The future of our organization and all we hope to accomplish depends on AAUW leaders implementing volunteers first. When we as leaders nurture belonging and joy within our membership, when we as leaders genuinely care for each and every member as a person, when we as leaders personally discover what moves each member to volunteer and make that personal connection, when we as leaders support each member by asking, how's it going? And recognize the contribution each member has made to fulfilling the mission in ways that are meaningful to them. Then we will see growth in membership, an increase in member participation, engagement, and investment in sustaining AAUW by stepping up to lead. Volunteers and leaders will experience the joy they hope to gain by becoming leaders. Thank you very much.